Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are tuning in. Thank you so much for joining me today for Equanimity for Our Perceived Enemies. This is the next episode of the Brahma Viharas. So if you've been following along, you know we've been expanding, or rather extending the qualities of loving kindness out first to our loved ones, then to our, first to ourselves rather, then to loved ones, then to strangers, and then to perceived enemies. And we do this with compassion, and now we're doing it with equanimity. Now, if you've missed any of that, don't worry, stick around, follow this episode, and then if you wish, you can go back, check out my YouTube channel, my website, www.suchsweetthunder.org. If you'd like to do any of those previous videos or practices, you can catch those there. Okay, so the reason why we do this is we're expanding our circle of care. We start with ourself, and typically self-care, although can be challenging for some, that's pretty intuitive, right? We want to have loving kindness for ourselves. We want to have compassion for ourselves. And we want to be equanimous. That's why we do these practices, is because we're hoping to cultivate these qualities deeper. And so that's indicative of those qualities already being in our heart. And so we're trying to cultivate that. And it's a part of the Darwinian result, if you will, that we care for ourselves. We show ourselves compassion. We show ourselves loving kindness and equanimity more than others. We consider ourselves, most of us consider ourselves to be the center of the universe. And that's, again, as a result of the Darwinian struggle. So we then take that care and compassion and we expand it out to loved ones or friends, people we're fond of. And we even, say this in our typical language: our family, our friends, my family. We consider them a part of us, of who we are. And so again, as a result of that, easy to include those people in our circle of care and compassion. Then we extend that circle again to people we don't know. Arguably, that's when the practice starts to get a bit challenging, when we're widening that circle of care and compassion to people we don't know. And then this stage, our perceived enemy. This is arguably the most challenging stage of this type of practice, when we're extending this beautiful quality of equanimity to people we don't like very much. Now, it is traditional to use the phrase perceived enemy, and I've talked about this on previous episodes, but I think it's worth mentioning again. That according to Buddhist psychology, where these practices arrive to us from, we don't ever actually experience an enemy. We only ever experience our own discomfort projected out onto another situation or onto another being. And as a result of that discomfort being placed on that other individual, we end up struggling or fighting that person as if we were fighting an objective enemy. But we're actually only really fighting ourselves projected outward. Now, I often get the question here, well, what about those people who really hurt me? You know, the guy who punched me in the jaw, isn't that an enemy? Well, the people who transgress against us, and we all have people who have transgressed against us, and we've all transgressed against somebody once or twice in our life, maybe more, maybe hundreds of times. That's a part of the human condition. 7 billion people on this planet, we're going to bump into each other every now and then. So, as a result of that transgression, that person, let's say, use the example of the guy who punched me in the jaw. Never happened, but it's just an example. That person makes a good hook for my projection. So if he hit me in the jaw, then maybe I meet him 2 weeks later and I feel that discomfort arising in my body, my mind, and my heart, and then I project that out onto that person. And because of his transgression against me, he simply is a very accessible target for my projections like that. But at the end of the day, it's still my own discomfort projected outward like that. And I often quote the great sage Mahatma Gandhi. So if you've heard this before, sorry for the repetition, but it is such a beautiful quote and it fits so well for this teaching. All of the devils and demons in this world arise out of the human heart. And it is the only battlefield where the war should be fought. I love that. And before we start the meditation, this is going to be a guided meditation episode. If you're interested in hearing me ramble on and on and on about equanimity, I'll be doing that tomorrow. Tomorrow is a Q&A session. And I've gotten some really lovely questions. So thank you for sending those in if you are one of those. If you haven't sent a question in and you would like to, please do so at the comments underneath the video, or you can send them privately through Messenger. I never mention anyone's name unless you ask to be mentioned. So that's fine as well. Okay, so before I guide the meditation, I'm just going to read another quote. This is from the Buddha. This is from the Book of Eights, which is one of the earliest recorded writings from the Buddha. And he says this: "Wrong-minded people do voice opinions, as do truth-minded people. When an opinion is stated, the sage is not drawn in. There is nothing dry about the sage." Sage meaning wise one in this. He continues, "Nowhere does a wise one hold contrived views about it is or it is not. For how could the wise one succumb to those, having let go of illusions and conceit? He is uninvolved, quite evolved, but uninvolved. The involved get drawn into conflicting opinions about life. What opinion can you dispute with one who's uninvolved, and how? The wise one does not take up or discard any view, for the wise one has shaken them all off, right here and right now." So the Buddha there explicitly encouraging his followers to let go of fixed views, let go of ideas of it is and it is not, or any belief system at all. And to just, he says, the wise one shakes those off right here and right now, embracing the present moment experience, letting go preferences and prejudices of views of it should be this or it shouldn't be that. Okay, again, I've talked way longer than I thought I might at the introduction for this, so I'm going to ring the bell. I'll guide us into silence. I'll guide us into the present moment. And then we'll offer these very precious gifts of equanimity to our own heart. First, always starting with ourself. And after each phrase, we'll visualize or imagine what our life would look or feel like if the phrase was completely reflective of our life circumstance. And we just do that briefly for ourselves. By now, we should have a good feel for what equanimity feels like, and we just move through that stage of today's guided meditation to really get to the meat of the practice, or the salad if you're vegan. And then we offer these beautiful phrases of equanimity to the heart of our perceived enemy. So it helps if you have someone in mind that you might want to work with before you start the practice, because we do this as a visualization. We visualize this person in front of us. Now, another pro tip, don't use a perceived enemy, don't use somebody who really hurt you, or somebody who really wronged you or caused you some great harm for this practice, at least not the first few times of this type of practice. Start light. Start with, somebody who caused you some agitation or causes you some agitation, but not somebody who really wounded you. Like that. That's fine. Okay. Enjoy this guided meditation on equanimity for our perceived enemy. So allowing the body, mind, and heart to rest. Just coming into this present moment experience. Noticing the breath as it enters and leaves the nose. Noticing the breath touching the back of the throat. And perhaps simply noticing the temperature changing from cooler to warmer as you inhale and exhale at the nose and the back of the throat. Noticing the rib cage expanding and contracting with each breath. The rising and falling of the abdomen as you inhale and exhale. You might also notice the back moving out as you breathe in as you breathe out. Noticing the shoulders rising and falling with each breath. You might also notice the body straightening up slightly as you breathe in and leaning forward slightly as you breathe out. And while resting there with the experience of the breathing, allow us to expand to include the sensations of clothing against the shoulders. Noticing the arms against the body. The hands resting against the body or touching each other. You might also notice sensations of clothing against the back. The weight of the body against the cushion or chair, mat or floor. Sensations of clothing against the legs. Noticing the feet against the mat or the floor. And while resting with this present moment experience, you might also notice sensations arising from the back of the neck, the sides of the neck, sensations arising from the back of the head, the ears. Noticing any sensations arising from the face, the forehead, and noticing any sensations arising from the top of the head. And while resting there with the breath and the body, you might also notice the sounds of the present moment. Not focusing on any one sound in particular, but noticing the entire field of sounds. Hearing all of the sounds all at the same time. You might notice how the sounds interact with the silence of the present moment. And so we'll rest right there, just for a few moments, maintaining open, spacious awareness on the sounds and silence, sensations of body and breath, and just rest. And now we'll begin offering these very precious phrases of equanimity to our own heart first. Visualizing or imagining what our life would look or feel like if each phrase was completely reflective of our life circumstance. May I be free from preference and prejudice. May I know things just as they are. May I experience the world knowing me just as I am. May I see into whatever arises. And now, while breathing in and breathing out, allow a visualization to arise in the mind's eye. Visualizing a perceived enemy. And again, not visualizing someone who really wronged us or hurt us, but someone who causes us some stress or agitation in our life. And if you can, seeing this person clearly in your mind's eye, perhaps standing or seated in front of you. Or if visualization is difficult, just saying their name a few times. And we'll begin offering these very precious phrases of equanimity to our perceived enemy's heart, as if we were bringing them the most precious, rare gift. And after each phrase, we'll spend about a minute or so visualizing or imagining what their life would look or feel like if each phrase was completely reflective of their life circumstance. May you do this. May you know things just as they are. May you experience the world knowing you just as you are. May you see into whatever arises. May you be free from preference and prejudice. May you know things just as they are. May you experience the world knowing you just as you are. May you see into whatever arises. And breathing in and breathing out, allowing any visualizations left in the mind's eye to dissolve. You can let those fade back into the open, spacious awareness from which they came. Bringing your attention and awareness to the sounds of the present moment. And simply noticing the entire canopy of sound and silence. Rest in the experience of hearing and just rest there for a moment. And while resting with the silence and sound of the aural field, bringing attention and awareness to the sensations of feet against the floor, sensations of clothing against the legs, the weight of the body against the cushion or chair, mat or floor, sensations of clothing against the back, you might notice sensations of hands resting against the body or touching each other, the arms resting against the body, Noticing the sensations of clothing against the shoulders. You might also notice sensations arising from the back of the neck and the sides of the neck. Sensations arising from the back of the head and the sides of the head. There might be sensations arising through the cheeks of the face, the lips, the nose, the eyes, and the forehead. Noticing any sensations arising from the top of the head. And while resting there with the silence and sound, sensations arising throughout the body, bringing attention to the breath as it enters and leaves the nose. Noticing the breath touching the back of the throat. Noticing the rib cage expanding and contracting with each breath. The rising and the falling of the abdomen as you inhale and exhale. Noticing the back moving out as you breathe in as you breathe out. The shoulders rising and falling with each breath. And so we'll rest right there just for a few moments, maintaining open, spacious awareness on the silence and sound, body and breath, and just rest. So I hope you all enjoyed this offering today of cultivating equanimity for our perceived enemy. It can be a very challenging practice. Again, it goes against the habits or the karmic debts, if you will, to our Darwinian struggle. We intuitively care for ourselves and our loved ones, our tribe, our nation, our political ideology, our sports team, whatever we consider our tribe. We habitually extend our care and compassion, our equanimity to those. But then offering this to people we don't know and people we don't like can take some time and some practice. So if you did this meditation with me today, and you're not feeling equanimity rather, or if you're not feeling like you were able to gift that to your perceived enemy, don't worry. Nobody really sits through one guided meditation, whether it's on equanimity or compassion or joy or loving kindness or present moment awareness. Nobody ever sits through one practice and exits that practice as a complete master. It never really happens that way. It takes practice. So, and if you've heard me on these talks before, you've heard me say this, but generally I recommend spending 2 to 3 weeks on each stage. So 2 to 3 weeks equanimity for the self, 2 to 3 weeks equanimity for the loved one, and so forth. So you really get a good chance to allow the phrases for yourself and then to others to really sit in the heart, really experience either any resistances to the phrases or any openings to the phrases, and then also how the phrases begin to bring shift into your awareness, how your relationship to others changes, your relationship to yourself might change or shift, your relationship towards equanimity might shift. So spending enough time for that to happen is a good idea if you want to take these up as a practice. Now, if you're just here for entertainment's sake, sorry, no, thank you for joining me. I appreciate that as well. And I will be back tomorrow. Tomorrow is, again, as I mentioned earlier, a Q&A session. So I will just be talking throughout the whole episode tomorrow. Plenty of topics to talk about. How to be equanimous with the current world crisis was one of the questions I got, and I continue to get. How to drop our views. We habitually cling to our view of the world, and we think that's how the world is. But how do we see through that? That's also very challenging. Dropping preferences and prejudices ties into that, one of the phrases. Then I also got a question on what is the difference between belief and faith. So I'll be talking a bit about that as well. So it should be a very rich episode tomorrow. I'm very much looking forward to that. I got a couple of other questions just about mindfulness meditation practice as well. So I hope to be able to get to those too. So thank you again for joining me. See you all tomorrow. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay clean, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you.